Greetings and salutations, everyone. I hope everyone is doing well today. Today, I have some very interesting information about the lab work. Like I said, my friend sent two out, and we received one last night. I'll explain all that after the intro. Two other things that I'd like to talk to you guys about rather quickly, too, but let's get into the links. As you know, I rely on Patreon, PayPal, and my merch to help the channel to continue to grow and go. The links to Patreon and PayPal are in the description below, my merch displayed directly under the video. Also, Dogman Frightening Encounters, Volume 1 through 3, the audiobook versions. They were written and researched by Tom Lyons, narrated and produced by me, Jeff Nadolny. Those audiobooks are available on Audible, Amazon, and iTunes, the links to which are also in the description as well. And finally, last but definitely not least, if you'd really like to help support this channel to continue to grow and go, simply subscribe, click the like button, and please leave a comment. It really does help, and guys, it definitely matters. Now, everyone, I have taken far too much of your time. Let's get on with today's upload, shall we? So, first thing I'd like to just bring up briefly. The Dogman fam here on the channel is like a family, a community. We look out for one another. We're very respectful to each other in the comment sections. Every once in a while, a new person might show up and just randomly, stir up the waves. But the majority of everyone is very good to each other in the comment section. We have a subscriber and her son who just recently have been diagnosed with an illness. YouTube doesn't really like anyone talking about it, so the illness that crippled the nation a year ago or 2 years ago. They are both very, very, very sick, and the son has asthma. She's very sick, so she didn't want to be named, but let's keep everyone in our prayers, including this person and her son. It'd mean a lot to them and to me as well. So the second little bit of info, it's about 1:57 in the morning. I was with my friend Andrew, who is the veterinarian, and he got the lab results. Some of the lab results. We're waiting on one more from a different lab to come back in, and of course he received them via email. But he knows a person that works in the lab, so we contacted her. Now, when I met up with him tonight at I think it was 10 o'clock when I got there finally, he had closed around 9:30, and we were talking about everything, very excited, and it was time we checked the internet or the email, and we opened the email. Well, he did. And he said, "This is very weird, Jeff." And I said, what do you mean? What? I'm like, don't tell me that it's deer, boar, bear. What is it? And he goes, well, it's strange because there is a species and a genus, but there's a missing gene. And I'm like, what? he said there's a missing gene. He said what we have is a crocutta crocutta. And I'm like, what the is that? And he said, hyena. And we sat there and talked for a few minutes, and he's like, he listens to Rogan a lot, Joe Rogan. And Joe Rogan talks about how there's a lot of wild animals in Texas. Ranchers are very wealthy. And he said, do you think anyone owned a hyena and it got loose and that's what was killed? And I said, he had described an animal that was very huge in the woods, lying there. And it resembled, well, his son, the father, and Carl and his daughter came up to this kill team that was there. The son came to the side, and he got a better glimpse of it, and he said, that's the biggest Siberian husky, or husky like a wolf, I'd ever seen. So, and that was killed in a preserve, whatever, about 40 miles away from where these samples were taken. So I said, well, what is the missing, what do you mean the missing species or missing gene? He said, well, there should be and it's not missing, it's an extra gene. There's an extra gene that cannot be identified. So what the lab is looking at when they identified it, they came up with crocutta crocutta, which is a hyena, I believe a spotted hyena. And the girl, we called her, Drew knows her very well, so we were talking, and I said, well, what is this extra gene? Why can't you tell us what it is? Is it another species? Is it, is it this, whatever? And she said, I don't know. It's a gene that almost belongs with this animal, but it's an unidentifiable. She goes, I ran it against, and she also said, where did you guys get this? And Drew said, it was found, and we were trying to identify what, because once he realized what it was, he said, we were trying to identify what this thing is. She couldn't give us an accurate, so it's some sort of spotted hyena with an extra gene, but we also have another lab result out there that should be coming in the next day or two, and I'd like to see where we stand on that. But I'm going to call Carl today, and talk to him about the findings and see if he's ever seen anything like it. That destruction that was done to the cows, I am so sorry, I'm so tired, guys. The destruction that was done to those cows, and they blamed wolves, and there's only 5 wolves in Colorado, in that area, hundreds of miles away, but wolves don't have a bite force as powerful as a hyena. But we're also talking about a 700-pound animal versus what hyenas are like, what, max 180 pounds, maybe 200, maybe. But this girl that Drew knows from the lab, he's been a veterinarian for a long time. So he's known this girl at the lab and trusts her. She's gonna do, I guess, another analysis or whatever and look at it to find out what this extra gene is, because it makes no sense. Like, you have a species, Crocuta crocata, then you have a genus, Crocuta, with an extra gene attached to that. So what? It's baffling to me. I don't understand the scientific lingo of it. I hope that it makes some more sense to you guys than it does to me. I mean, it does make sense once Drew explained it to me. Pretty much what it is the Crocuta crocata is the species, then the Crocuta is the genus. Whatever is this missing gene would make it something other than a spotted hyena. But what, and why can't we identify it? So who knows? Maybe the second report will have the information that we need. That's coming out of Oregon. So 2 days. Anyway, I just wanted to share that with you. I'm weirded out, but not really, because the amount of damage that was done to the cows. But what does it mean to have a species in a genus, but as that genus, it's almost like it evolved? I don't know. Drew said that he's going to sit down with me and talk to me a little bit more about this. So tonight I've got a really great interview out of Texas. Government used a Dogman to threaten him. He's had some pretty creepy events. So let's get into it. All right, everybody. Tonight I have a subscriber who submitted his encounter to me yesterday. I narrated it yesterday. He goes by G-Man, and he's here to share his whole family's encounter with us. It was kind of a plaguing time in his family's life. And G-Man, how are you?
Good. How are you doing?
I'm doing well. Thank you for taking some time out of your day to spend with us. I've talked to you for a couple hours, actually, before the interview. It's been good talking with you. So as you know, you've listened to my channel. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to turn the floor over to you so you can share the events that happened to you to us. So the floor is yours, my friend.
All right. Like I said, call me G-Man. Yeah, this happened. I guess this family event started on November 9th in 2016. Like I said, I was sitting in my front meeting room and I was watching something on YouTube. And again, about 7:40 in the evening, and my wife takes our dogs out in the evening and, to take them out. And because again, we have to go out in the backyard. We have this, it's all fenced in. We have a pool, but due to from the garage driveway to the inside of the pool, the deck goes up. So we have this 8-inch space between the gate. So we have a lot of rabbits that, they come in during the season, and they will burrow under the yard or under our shrubs. And again, we have this neighbor. He has these cats, and they will come up. They know exactly where the rabbits are. They can find them when they come in there, and they'll sit there trying to hunt the rabbits. The only problem is when my dogs come out there, they will either chase the cats or chase the rabbits, and they chase the rabbits into the pool, or hopefully now and then just chase them outside the yard, and we have to stop them before they go try to get out from underneath the gate.
Right.
So that's why we have to go outside. I know that sounds weird. You have to go outside. Oh, you have a fenced-in yard, but yeah, that's why we have to go outside. So anyway, so I'm in the room, and my wife starts yelling my name and panic, and I'm like, oh God, and, I got to go out and break up the dogs and the cat, so I go out there panicking, like, oh my God, I got to break this fight up, what's going on? And instead of my wife out there, trying to break up a fight between the cat and my dogs, or trying to pull a rabbit out of one of my dogs, as a play toy, Mouse as a play toy, she's staring over onto the left side over at my neighbor's roof. Or at least I think it's the roof. I look over there, and I'm like, what are you looking at? And I'm like, to myself, I'm saying that. And then I look over there, and I'm thinking, okay, I'm going to find some kind of, raccoon or something on the roof. Well, it's not a raccoon. I see this cylinder-looking craft. I guess a UFO unidentified object, and it's just hovering about 20 or 30 feet above the house. And it's a 2-story house. And it's, it looks like it's on, it looks like it's on fire. I mean, literally, it looks like it's on fire. It's got 5 appendages sticking out of the rear. So I'm considering that the base. I don't know, but there's these 5 appendages or legs sticking out the rear.
Now, when you sent me the encounter, you kind of you said kind of like tentacles. But were they kind of like...
they're appendages, yeah, like legs. Okay. I'm sorry.
So they were kind of like landing legs?
Yeah, like landing legs.
Okay.
Exactly. There are 5 of them.
Okay.
I'm so sorry.
No, it's cool. I just didn't understand.
I typed it up when I sent it. I typed it up right then and tried to send you my story.
All right.
I meant to apologize if I messed up any.
No, it was great. I mean, I didn't know if they were off to the side but they were landing legs.
No, they were in the rear, which, like I said, I guess I'm considering that the base because there was 5 of them.
Okay.
Sticking out, and odd number, but there were 5. That's what I counted, at least. I mean, this thing was standing in, it was stationary, hovering. Anyway, it was well, I consider phasing because it was changing from a bright orange to a dark orange to a reddish to a bright orange. It was, it was like it looked like it was on fire. It was almost kind of blurry looking. So I'm like, this is like really cool looking thing, I'm looking at this UFO this close to me. And so I yell at my daughter from the inside the house to bring me out my video camera. Because she's asked me where it is. I'm telling her, and so she's bringing that, and I'm telling her to hurry up. So she brings me out to my camcorder, which is, like I said, a Sony DVD camcorder. It's not one of the newer models, but so anyway, she brings me this out, and I'm turning it on, making sure there's a good disc, a disc inside of it, and I'm turning it on. And again, if anyone's ever on one of these things, they're just like, it's like Windows booting up on your computer. It takes forever.
Yep.
So I'm sitting here like, tapping my feet, waiting for this thing, my camcorder to boot up. And I guess this object hears us or sees us. I'm not sure. All I know is it reacted to us. So it raises, goes up vertically slowly, about, I don't know, maybe 5-10 feet, and then starts going in an easterly direction for about you have to understand there's a 2-story house to my left, and our alley is right there, and there's a 90-degree curve to our alley right there at the one end of the alley, and it curves right, and there's a street. There's another 2-story house, and then there's a back street. So it goes in that direction, and almost to the other street on the other side of the houses, and it stops, and then it changes direction and starts going into a southern direction, and it's going real slow. So I run in there real quick I'm still looking at my camera, and it's still booting up. So I run in to get my phone, and at the time I only had a Windows 10 phone. It didn't have the best camera, but it's the only thing I had. So I'm running, and I get it, and I'm trying. And of course, if you ever had a Windows phone, you're trying to find the pictures, and then, hit it with your finger and trying to get to the pictures. Anyway, it's about to the end of my alley, about maybe, I want to say maybe 30 yards, 35. And so I get a picture of it. And then by that time, my camera says ready. So I point my Sony video camera at it, and I take a small video, and then I said, hey, maybe I can see this better in night vision because there's no lights. Our neighborhood's fairly dark. Obviously it's above you. There, street lights. There's not a lot of street light pollution. So I turn it to night vision, and I get about maybe 3 seconds of video. Anyway, at that point in time, it switches direction again and starts to go back into an easterly direction. So my wife feels, it's gone. It's going away. There's nothing we're going to see. So she said, oh, that was really cool. So she goes back inside. And so my daughter and I are looking at each other, and I had to make the quick decision and say, we're going after this thing because I want to get a better picture of it. It was so close. It would have been the best video ever in the world, at least to me, because it was literally right over my driveway, the other house. So anyway, we chased this object, and remember, I live in Allen, so if anyone lives in Texas, you'll know where I'm talking about. So I go in the eastern direction. I go up Jupiter and take a left. And I go through, Plano, because the cities all border each other, Garland, Saxe, actually 4 towns, and then I end up in Wiley, going on Highway 78, almost going toward Lavon Lake, which is pretty much country area, and there's no city. And at that point in time, like I said, I'm going there, the legal streets and having to stop at the lights and stop signs and breaking the law when I can. So, my little excessive speed, anyway, but I'll lose it. It's still going in easterly direction. I finally lose it. So anyway, we get back home, and I just figure, well, that was really neat, and I'm going to have a really great story the next day to tell my family and friends.
Absolutely.
So, go ahead.
No, I just said absolutely.
Yeah, I just, like I said, I thought it was going to be a great, a great story. So anyway, so we get home, and a few days go by, and come Saturday, well, when the malls open up around, 10 a.m., I take my daughter shopping. It was always kind of a weekend thing for us. So I take her out shopping to go to the mall. We go out, and my wife is home. She stays home. Usually one of us stay home with the kids. I call them the kids, my furry kids. They're like family. So anyway, we get home around 1:30, and we go in, and my wife is laying in bed, and sick as a dog, to use a an antique phrase. And I'm asked, I said, what happened? I said, what's wrong? And, hey, and she proceeds to tell me that she was out with it, earlier. She was, about, about 11, maybe 11:30. She went outside and took the dogs out. and now she's on the right side of our yard. And the other side of it, there's another 2-story house. And anyway, she's got the dogs out, and she, out of the corner of her peripheral vision, she's, kind of up. She thought what she thought she saw was a flock of geese flying over in a V pattern. So she looks up, thinking she's going to look at a flock of geese flying over. Well, instead, she sees this triangle-shaped, grayish-looking craft, another UFO, identified object. But anyway, and she says why she looks up, she says it starts to, to vanish in front of her. So this, I guess, just kind of bothered her a lot. So she she literally picks up our dogs and goes back in the house. And she says about a half hour later, she starts to feel really sick. And by the time I get there, I mean, she literally looked like death warmed over. I mean, she was just, God, she really did. I mean, you ever look at, I guess, the Walking Dead zombie without the falling off skin, that's how she looked like. So she's very nauseous and all, but very pale. So anyway, this kind of goes, like I said, and again, I describe my wife as a very strong woman. She used to work, her family used to have a ranch out in Rome, Texas, and they used to raise longhorns and other cattle and livestock, and she would barrel race. So she's a very tough person. And I'm not going to go into her medical history, but she's had some issues in her life, and she never misses work. I mean, that's all I'll say. I mean, if she's sick, it takes a lot to make my wife sick and to really be laid up in bed. I mean, she went on for weeks, and it's like nothing we gave her, nothing she took. She went to the doctor, nothing helped. But eventually, in a few weeks, she started feeling, she started to finally start coming out of it again, start feeling being herself again. So anyway, so during this time, I would go out at night, thinking, I'm going to, I take my video camera out because it's like, if I ever see you, I'm going to be prepared now. And since this happened to us twice, the first time I thought about it, now this has happened twice, so I'm going to, now I don't go outside in my backyard without taking a video camera. So I would go out there at different times of the night, and I went out one night, I think it was about 9. I'm guessing here, I forgot the time, I just know it was dark. And it was like 27 degrees. This is, I think, during December at the time going on. It was really cold. And I just remember, because I checked temperature, was like 27 degrees. So I'm out on my patio, and I turn my video camera on because right directly behind my house, again, this is facing east. The rear of my house is facing east. And I look, and I'm seeing what it looks like a water tower. I mean, big old city water towers, kind of. And the only problem with this is one thing, it's higher than most of the houses, than all the houses. And two, I don't have a water tower behind my house. So that's a little strange. So I'm videotaping this, and for going on, and I'm noticing then it tilts in a 40-degree angle. Again, I don't know of any water towers that hover in the air and tilt at a 40-degree angle. So anyway, about 40 minutes of this, I found I'm too cold to stay, and I just finally, I felt I got enough footage, and I just finally go in. So after this, I call MUFON. I said, I feel I have something I guess I can report to them. I think this is kind of neat. I guess UFO sighting, especially multiple ones, is not something most people have in such a short period of time or have at all. So I get on the site and I write a report. And a few days later, I get a phone call, and from a gentleman claiming, and I say that because as the story goes on, you find out, claiming to be a MUFON investigator. So he asked me a few questions. He asked me questions about, what I, besides the report, what I saw, got a description. And, I felt he was just, like I said, he was validating, if what I was saying was true or not. So he decided, and I told him, I said, I have pictures and I have video. I said, he said, so we set up a time during the week, and he comes over and he interviews my daughter, my wife, and myself. And during this time, I'm showing him, I show him all my video and everything I have. So he finds the video, and of course, during this time, he says, you're not the only person that has called in and made a report to us and has seen UFOs in this area. And I said, really? And which to me, it kind of elated me a little bit, because it made me feel like, wow, I'm not I'm not a crazy person. I'm not the only one, my wife and my daughter aren't crazy, and we aren't the only ones that saw this. And so he said, of course, like I said, he claimed, said, yeah, they have several other reports. So anyway, he asked me all of a sudden, then he asked me, he said, hey, can I have your pictures in your video? At the time, had not made any copies. I said, no, but I'd be more than happy if you give me your information. I'll send you copies. And he seemed a little drawn back by that, little kind of like, no, that's not going to be good enough. I mean, that's the impression. It was like he wasn't happy about it at all. He was like, he actually insisted. I didn't say this before, but he actually insisted. He said, really, I can give you back this when we're done with it. And I said, no, I'd rather just make copies. I said, because just in case something happens and I don't get it back, I won't. I don't have any proof saying, this really happened. So anyway, so he agrees to, for me to send him copies. And he also, then he says before leaving, he said, well, just call me if you have any other sightings, or you forgot, you need to, fill any gaps or anything, to call me and let me know so I can fill out my report. I said, okay. So anyway, one day, I guess, a few weeks later go by, and all of a sudden, I go out about 5:25 in the evening to get the mail after work, and walk in my mailbox, and I hear a helicopter flying over fairly lower than most, because we have now and then a Airlift helicopter fly over. But this one's not flying in the regular pattern, and I look up, and it's not a care flight; it's a Black Hawk helicopter. So, and I was like, that's really odd, and it's flying directly toward me. It's coming from a westerly north, south, diagonal directly toward my house, from the north to south direction, kind of parallel to my house. Anyway, it's about 75 feet up in there and stops and hovers right in front of me. And again, I live in a very big, in a fairly big neighborhood. It's not a small neighborhood by any means, and I live in Allen, it's a big city. It's not like I'm in the country here. Right. So this helicopter's hovering above me, and I'm staring at it and looking at the pilot, and as you can see him at 75 feet, it's not too hard to see him. And he stared at me, and this goes on for about, he's at me, like I said, I could swear he waved at me, and then flies off. I'm like, wow, that was really different. So I go inside, I tell my wife, and she, I said, and she says, yeah, I heard that helicopter out there. She goes, that was, and I said, yeah. I said, he stopped, and it was and I told her, I described exactly what helicopter it was. And she said, that's really odd. And I said, yeah, it really was odd. I said, that's really kind of creepy, actually. Why is he stopping in front of my, in front of me and hovering in front of me? So anyway, again, I call what I thought was a MUFON investigator. I leave him a message. Of course, again, I get no phone call. Then during, all of a sudden, around 2:30 at 3 a.m., I started getting flyovers every night by a military helicopter. I mean, you can tell civilians and the military. It's freaking, sounds exactly just, it's the same thing as the Black Hawk, flying over low, literally low, over my house every night. And I'm like, we can't sleep. And it's like they almost know we're about to fall asleep. They fly over, literally. And I'm like, this goes on for like 6 months. And, we're losing sleep over this. We're getting frustrated over this. You know, we have no one to, you know, call. It's not like we can call our police and say, hey, can you please, you know, I want to file a complaint on this military helicopter. Can you please ask them, you know, to stop flying over my house at 2:33 a.m. in the morning?
Right.
You know. So anyway, during this time, I'm starting to stay up later and later because I know as soon as I fall asleep, here comes this helicopter is going to fly over my house again. So I want to catch these freaking bozos in the freaking act. You know, I'm frustrated. It's like, again, I don't know what I can do, but I just want to catch them, you know. I want to, I guess, maybe take a picture and prove that I'm not, you know, that we're not crazy. And so out of habit, and, you know, most people I'm sure do this, I go to the kitchen, I go to the refrigerator to get me something to drink. Well, before I do that, I have two windows in my kitchen, one facing north and one facing west. And the one facing west is my front yard. Well, directly in front of my window is my mailbox. And it's covered, you know, it's got bricks around it, seeing that. And so anyway, I look out the window because I always look out, kind of like a neighborhood watch thing. You know, we kind of keep, you know, our neighbors keep an eye on each other's houses and keep from people from vandalizing, you know, at least we can catch them because it's happened a few times in the past in our neighborhood. So out of habit, I always do that. Well, I'm looking out and I'm looking, you know, both sides of, you know, I'm looking left and right. And to my left, I see what I thought was a coyote at the time, but it wasn't like a regular coyote. I mean, at the time I didn't know what a Dogman was, and I just thought it was this biggest coyote I ever saw. Anyway, it just walked past all the other houses. I mean, it's in the kind of almost in the middle of the street. There's no lights. I mean, it's kind of, there's low lighting on one side, on the left side, but it's low. It's not really bright. But in front of my house, there's no light. And we don't keep our front lights on. Maybe that's a bad habit, but we don't. And neither does my neighbors. So anyway, walks right in front of my mailbox. I mean, literally, it's right in front of my mailbox. And its back literally walks up to it, and its back is level, if not maybe, I'm not going to swear on this, but a little taller than my mailbox. Top of my mailbox. My mailbox is like 4.5 feet, 50, feet tall, around 53 inches. I went out and measured it because I really wanted to know. And so anyway, it's this tall coyote, and it's gray. The reason I think it's a coyote because it's gray. And I didn't know at this point if it's a coyote. Is it a wolf? Because I don't know of any wolves in Texas, but I've never seen one. But it's the biggest coyote or wolf I've ever seen. And then I'm thinking maybe it's interbred, with a wolf, and maybe that's why it's so big. But it's gray. It's got really coarse fur. I mean, it's obvious even at the lighting. I mean, there's a little bit of lighting because on the right side of the street there's the street lights, but so you can kind of see the ambience of the light. So you can it's not completely dark. It's just not really lit.
Right.
But so I'm looking at this big, huge, whatever it is, and it's stopped. It turns to the window and it looks up and it stares at me. And I said in my previous story, in my notes, I said, I don't know if it was looking at me at first. It was just looking at my house, or it was looking for an animal. But I feel it saw me because it stopped. I mean, and it stared at me for like 15 to 20 seconds. I mean, literally we had a stare down. I'm looking at this thing and it's looking at me. And so I know it saw me. I mean, I got the blinds open, so it was pretty obvious it could see me. And it had these goldish looking eyes. It had, that eye shine.
Yep.
And Except now when it turned its head a little bit, you could tell. I mean, it looked, but it's kind of turned its head like it's, when you're looking, you kind of look around just to make sure everything around you is clear. And it kind of looked reddish to me. I mean, the eye shine turned reddish. Now, like you said, the problem with this is there's no direct lighting on this. I'm just going to call it Dogman because that's what I think it is, but it was just too big to be a coyote and too big to be a wolf. Again, I raised a shepherd wolf, and it was bigger than most shepherds. And like I said, I could stand it up on my rear. I told Jeff I could stand it up on rear haunches, and my shepherd wolf could stand about 6'3". This thing was just
really quick.
Go ahead.
Now, having had the experience with your dog, and obviously how big your dog was, and you could stand it up, and it was 6'3".
Yeah.
If this thing was to stand up, just an estimated guess, how tall do you think this thing would have been?
Easily?
Yeah.
Minimum 7'5".
Wow.
Minimum. And the reason I say that is because my shepherd wolf was probably standing up maybe 2.5 feet, maybe a little more higher.
Right.
3, from its haunches, on all fours to its back. If this thing measured 4.5 feet, and I'm just going off just what I'm, is what I consider what it looked like, because it not only was it tall enough for it was long. I mean, this thing was long. I mean, it was really elongated, and it was massive. I mean, its chest was really big, and it was long. So it was really kind of weird looking how long it was. Its measurements were weird. I mean, I know that's not probably the best description or something.
It's the best that you can give us, because it's such a hard thing to.
It didn't matter. I mean, if anyone that's raised animals, raised dogs, different brands, and like wolves and all, I've been around a lot of wolves in my life. I used to, work at animal sanctuaries and stuff, and wolves, and I know I know how big a wolf gets, most wolves. But this thing was, like I said, it was long. It was kind of long, and it was massive in the chest area. But it's, I don't know really how weird I'd describe it. But it had a look like a coyote. The face kind of looked like a coyote, German Shepherd maybe look on its snout.
Okay.
And I mean, I could see its teeth a little bit. It kind of glared its teeth at me a little bit. Some people call it, I've heard, I've listened to some story, some people call it a smile.
Yeah.
Or maybe it was growling at me. I don't know. But it wanted to make sure I saw its teeth. That's all I'm going to say. I'm not going to say it really like, rawr, it didn't growl at me. I never heard it growl.
Right.
It just kind of like it showed its teeth at me to like, it let me know I can see you.
Now, with the length of this thing,
yeah.
Was there a tail that made it longer, or?
I didn't measure the tail. I only used the body.
Okay.
So that was the question you asked me earlier. It did have a tail.
It did. Okay.
Yes, it did have a tail. It wasn't a long tail.
Mm-hmm.
It was kind of a, let's see.
Did it? What dog would it resemble? Like a husky, a shepherd? Was it bushy?
It was. You ever seen Pomeranians? How bushy they're kind of messy their tails get when they get kind of bushy long.
Yeah.
I mean, when they're not trimmed. It was like a kind of a unkept tail, maybe about. I mean, I really didn't measure his tail. I'm trying to remember it, and it kind of, because maybe a 1.5 foot, maybe 2. I can't really tell you. I wasn't really paying attention to its tail. That really wasn't my big thing. All I know is it had a bushy tail, and it had that same coarse, crappy looking fur, like it needed a bath, like it hadn't been brushed in forever.
Right.
And, but that's what the tail looked like.
Okay.
It wasn't like super long by any means. It was just kind of bushy. Like I said, it reminds me, I have 2 palms, and it just looks like a palm tail that hasn't been combed. It hasn't been combed in a few days. It's just kind of really unkept looking. It's bushy, but it's not super long, but it's not super short. It's not a stub by any means. It's long enough to know that there's, like a foot, maybe, it's just for its size, probably foot, maybe a little longer tail. What the biggest tail? It was just bushy and unkept.
Okay.
And like I said, it looked like it needed a bath. That's the only way I can describe it. I don't know how else to describe it. But like I said, I was looking more of its, the girth around it. It was like this freaking. I want to say it's like that that Werewolf in London girth, that wolf they had, how fat it was around the chest, how big it was around the chest.
Right.
That's the only way I can describe it. I'm not going to describe it as something else because I didn't know. I'm saying because all I saw was the 4/4s, and it was just this big, wide chest. And that's the only way I can describe it. It was this big, freaking wide chest, these kind of big arms. I can't tell you if they were muscular or not, because, like I said, it's looking at me at the time. And in the mailbox, my mailbox is kind of in the way. But as it moves, I could see that its arms. Its legs were kind of shorter. The way it was walking on the floor. It was like, it didn't look right. It really just didn't look. It looked like, oh God, it looked like, I guess, a runt, or it just wasn't put together right. It walked kind of, I don't know. I can't even say it walked right. It didn't walk wrong, but it didn't walk right. It just kind of like it had a glitch in it or something. That's kind of, it's weird. It just walked kind of
unnatural, kind of
like an alpha, like, hey, I'm the big guy on the block, I'm puffing my chest out and I'm the big guy, kind of a little bit of a kind of teeny bit of a swagger, but but it wasn't a swagger. It was more like it was trying to walk smoothly, and it was, doing the best it can to walk very smooth, but having a little bit of a trouble. Anyway, so after it stared at me, and and I obviously wanted to, I guess, I don't know, have an accident. That's really, my stomach almost felt like it was falling out.
Right.
It felt, my stomach dropped. It was like, my mouth dropped. I was like, I'm staring at something that doesn't look like it should even exist. That's all I can put it. It's like I'm looking at this thing that just looks like it doesn't belong.
Right.
And I don't know our standards of normality, but to me, I've never seen an animal like it. That's all I can say.
Yeah, I don't think there is a standard of normality with these things. Just like you and I were talking, I can't, and I've tried to, talk to a couple of other people and tried to explain exactly how what I saw moved, and it's a very hard thing to explain because there isn't a word that we have to explain.
Yeah, exactly. I can't explain to you how it walked. It walked odd. It walked like it was trying to make an effort to walk smoothly.
Yeah.
But it was having trouble walking smoothly. And I guess this is, like I said, after it stopped looking at me, and after it gave me that look, and it just, and I'm sitting there trying to, of course, you analyze this stuff after you've gone through it, and you can think, but it just turned to me like, you're not worth my time anymore. I'm just going to walk off. And it walked to the end of the street, turned right, and that was, and walked down the street, and that was the last I saw of it. But what got me about the whole thing, besides how creepy, scary it looked, I mean, I'm going to say that, and I've been around animals my life, and I'm not, I don't really, I'm not scared of any animals, but that thing scared the bejeebus out of me. I mean, to this day, I won't go outside at night, check my mail, or go work in my garage with a door open without carrying, at my side. And I know I maybe shouldn't be saying this, but I walk out to carry mail. I carry my 9mm with me. Yeah. Or if I'm in the garage, I have a assortment of, pointy weapons or my 9mm with me. So, and nothing leaves my side too close because, and this is years later. So, that's how nervous this thing had made me. I mean, I will walk, the first thing I do when I walk outside, I look around, I get to the front, right where my roof, I look on my roof, I run to my mailbox, I get my mail, and I run back. And if that makes me some kind of a chicken, then it makes me a chicken. But I personally don't ever want to run into this thing in person. I don't know how else to, but that's how it made me feel. It just put that fear of God in you, I guess, or fear of the devil, or whatever you want to say. But like I said, I look back on analyzing it, I just could understand the eye shine. That's what got me the most about it. I mean, well, everything got me about it, but looking at his eyes, it was just like, it had a natural light, system built into it. I was like, where did the eye shine come from? So anyway, that's about all I can say about that. But right. Again, going past this, does it have anything to do with my ongoing events? I don't know. I just don't. I just thought it was weird because at the time I'd never even heard of the Dogman. I never heard, like I said, all I ever heard of was Sasquatch, right, or Bigfoot, or whatever you want to call it, the Patterson film. That was my knowledge of what a cryptid was. So anyway, a few more, it said the flyovers continue, and right around, 6 months, I'm guesstimating here, maybe a little short, a little longer. One night, about in the evening, well, it's still daylight. I'm going to make sure that's clear. It was still daylight. Okay. My daughter and I are going to go do our normal walk around the neighborhood. And so we're out in the front yard. I'm, of course, checking the mail. I've had it. But we look up. It's just around evening, and we look up, and I'm hearing military aircraft. Like I said, I've been around them all my life. I know the sound of a military aircraft compared to a civilian one. I look up to the north of me above the houses, and there are 13 military transports flying over west, which, really close together, really good close formation. So the first one, I think, turns north. The second one goes, goes straight. The other one goes south, and I guess the pattern repeats itself until the end one. So, excuse me if I got the direction wrong. I'll just remember each one went a different direction until the last one. So after that, I got no more flyovers. Nothing, again, thinking, wow, that was nice. All this is over, right? Well, that's what I thought. I said, everything's returning to normal. Well, about a little bit after that, I get a phone call from MUFON. And this guy is saying, hey, I'm sorry it took me so long to get back to get with you about your report. We've been really backed up. I'm just going to tell you what he said. And I said, and he proceeds to ask me questions. And I tell him, I said, I already had a MUFON investigator come out and talk to me. And I told him, I went on to explain. I said, the events that, I showed him my pictures. I showed him, I did an interview with him. Me and my family did. I showed him my video. I told him that he wanted it, and I didn't give it to him. Then I proceeded to tell him all the events that transpired after that, excluding the mutated coyote or Dogman. I didn't tell him that. So I left that part out.
Right.
He proceeds to tell me, and again, I quote, says, I never heard of that person, and there's only one other person besides myself that investigates your area. At that moment, I get a little, one of those, you ever got one of like somebody just hits you with a brick, reality across your face, your mouth drops and time stands still. Well, that was me at that moment. So I proceeded to ask him, and I said, well, then I said, if you're the only two, I said, who else has access to your files? And he tells me no one else should have access to our files. Again, I'm starting to freak out more, and I said, well, and I basically said, well, somebody does. I said, because somebody come out here pretending to be an investigator. And I said, I would like to know who it is. And if you could find that out for me. And he said, and he was very, cordial with me and, and giving. I mean, it's like you could tell, he's like, I could see he was kind of freaking out a little bit too. His voice was a little stressed too at that point in time. He says, I will find out and I will call you back. So, anyway, so that was pretty much it in the story. And I never understood why we got harassed for all this time. I don't understand anything why my videos may have caused the events that occurred. I was, just reporting what we all do things different. I was just thought it was a neat thing that I got pictures of a UFO and some videotape. And but I'll never understand what exactly happened and why these events happened. It just always seemed weird to me. And again, like I told Jeff, I said there's a few other events, details I left out of the story, and for obvious reasons my wife didn't want to bring up, but they do pertain to the story. But it's just I don't really feel comfortable talking about them publicly.
Right.
So, but anyway, that was pretty much it. So, that was my story.
That's, when
Go
you
ahead,
and I
Jeff.
spoke for a couple hours prior to the interview, and when I narrated it, like I said, I skimmed through it. The title is spot on.
Yeah.
And then I narrated it, and as I was narrating it, I was like, this is all pointing to one direction for me. I think everything was just, it all happened for a reason. I think that guy came there, and this is just my view, to scare you. And obviously that didn't work. So
yeah, but he never threatened me while I was there. He just wanted. The only thing I felt odd about is after he asked me if he could have my stuff, and when I said no, I want to keep my originals, but I'd be more than happy to give you copies. That was the only time that I felt any tension from this gentleman. It's like he wasn't happy that I wasn't going to hand over my stuff right then and there.
Now, was he dressed? How was he dressed?
He was dressed in slacks and a dress shirt, short sleeve.
Okay.
In which, at the time, just a regular kind of
casual dress.
khaki. Well, I mean, I'm not going to go on there. I'm just saying he just, you could tell he had, kind of casual dress, you know, um, just slacks and a kind of a dress shirt, short sleeve dress shirt. So, and, wearing a watch. So
Yeah.
that's about it. I mean, he looked pretty like you would never notice, pick him out of a crowd. You wouldn't be able to pick him out of a crowd. He'd just be a normal. I mean, he was a little over, little overweight. Most people get kind of like the, what do you call it? The pot belly.
Right.
Yeah. A little bit of pot belly on him. But other than that, he wasn't, anybody that stood out.
Yeah.
So,
I mean, this is.
But I thought one thing he did say to me when we were out discussing the first UFO I saw over the house. He started talking to me about how to he's saying, well, if you really want to measure, he was telling me stuff that, distance, height. And I mean, it was kind of discussing, it was talking to me in a military slang.
Okay.
That was the only thing I felt odd is when he started talking, and I looked at him like, really? I'm an engineer and all, but I mean, he's talking to me in military slang a little bit. And then it's like, I'm not trying to make anything out of this. And so please don't think I am. I'm not trying to embellish this or anything.
Right.
It's just, I thought that was a little odd to me. And it's like he corrected it real quick. And he was talking to me and then he corrected it real quick. Like, oh, I'm sorry. You're here. Kind of like, and went back to his normal, civilian self.
Right.
But like I said, that's the only time I thought it was a little odd. And I didn't bring that point because I really didn't think, now that I'm thinking about it, it's like, I thought about it, but it just, to me, sometimes, and maybe I'm wrong here, sometimes the minor points are actually the main points, the details, but it was, to me, it's like, it just seemed like it was just odd.
Right.
Because, people talk to you sometimes, and if they were in the military, they're going to do what comes natural to them. And sometimes they'll forget who they're speaking to or, at the moment, and they'll just start speaking. So that's why I'm not contributing too much into it. But now that I look back on it, considering everything happened, it starts, and again, I'm not saying everything happened, but it starts to fall into place now because it starts to make more sense to me.
Yeah.
I mean, after the Black Hawk helicopter came and hovered over me, and for 2 minutes in my neighborhood, literally in front of right here in my neighborhood, and I know it wasn't the only neighbor looking at this thing. And, this guy is looking at me, he's hovering in front of me. I, at that point, knew there was something not right here. And the fact that he was never returning my calls. And I'm like, something's going. And then, of course, after the flyovers every night, that kind of cemented the deal that this guy is not who he thinks he is or says he was,
Right. Yeah, like what I was trying to say was not, he wasn't there to scare you. I think he was there more or less to try to get the pictures. I mean, this is my view. I'm not, and like when you said, you're not trying to embellish anything. I mean, I don't feel like you are. And I mean, it doesn't take a rocket scientist to just sit here and listen to what you're saying and not connect the dots. Because this guy came, composed, asked you for the originals, was a little perturbed when he didn't get the originals. Then you got Blackhawks coming, and then he's not answering your call. And then all of a sudden, there's this quote unquote Dogman in front of your house, just your house. I mean, and staring directly at you. Not, I mean, like you said, you don't know if he was staring directly at you, but I mean, you could see him. I mean, and
he ignored every other house.
Right. And
he literally stopped in front of mine, ignored every house, and after he turned, he ignored every house. I mean, there's only one other house, but if any house would have been a good house for a Dogman to walk up to, since then, like I said, I've done a lot of research on these cryptids, and you always hear them going up to windows and looking in windows.
Mm-hmm. And I doubt he was.
That would have been the perfect house. Could have had these big windows with no curtains. It
Right.
would have been the perfect house to look into.
Right.
He ignored it. He walked by it. It was like, like I said, I just thought it was this mutated coyote or shepherd. I didn't know what it was. It was huge. It was messed up looking, and it had these freaking evil looking eyes. The stuff you see on and Hollywood movies.
Right.
That would, and like I said, why didn't he go to the other houses?
Yeah.
So,
and I highly doubt that he was out in front of your house looking for the rabbits that hang out in your yard.
No, it wasn't, because my neighborhood at the time had plenty of rabbits out, and it could have had plenty of rabbits. I mean, literally, we had plenty of rabbits in our neighborhood. I mean, our neighborhood is full of rabbits. There's if you were an animal or a coyote, you're never going to run dry with rabbits in our neighborhood, because it's just full of them. So, it's just, like I said, I watched it walk through all around all the other houses. And like I said, these houses, I mean, he could have stopped at any of these houses. He could have stopped at the one after. Like I said, it had no curtains there. He just walked right past everything like nothing was interested in. The only house that was interested in was mine.
Yeah.
And, and I don't know. Like I said, I don't know. I guess now looking back at it, I guess you can put, A plus B plus C, equals D, and put it all together. But at the time, I was just like, this just didn't make any sense to me. I mean, again, I wasn't trying to be, look at any, I was just living my life and trying to understand, why I'm being harassed every night by a military helicopter. My family is, we're not getting any sleep. We're being harassed. And it's like, I'm telling you, Jeff, it's like they always knew we're about to go to sleep before they fly over. I mean, it was almost I could say, and I will say this, not all the time did they fly over to, I mean, it was majority of the time, but most of, it's like when we just go to bed, they would fly over.
Yeah. And like you said, there's no military bases in the
There's none. Like I said, the only military base I knew of at the time was in Grand Prairie, Texas, and it shut down. It was a naval base, and it shut down years ago. So, and I even asked this guy, they exposed the MUFON investigator, and he said there are no military bases around my area, because that was the one question, somehow we got into talking about all this, and he said there are no military bases around here. Because, you hear UFOs sometimes going around military bases. It seems to be a thing about them,
Right.
There's a military base, you got a UFO, or water, you got a UFO. I mean, we don't have any water around except Levon, and that was way, that was north east of me, so that I could understood why these things were, one thing, over my neighborhood, literally, I mean, over my neighborhood, over these houses. I never understood that. I'll never understand that. I mean, it's like, if I didn't know better, it was like, what do you call it, doing research?
Yeah.
That's the only thing that came over to me, came to me, is these things are doing research on people. That's all I can think of is research. And maybe that's a little outlandish, a little fantastic, thinking, but, that's the only word I can think of now that I think about it, is it's why otherwise would a UFO be hovering 20 feet above a house? I mean, literally, what else is it going to be doing 20 feet above a house?
Yeah.
Cooling its radiator, what? I don't know.
It makes, none of it makes sense, but it all does kind of make sense once you step back. And
yeah, it does. And now it does. And again, like I said, you asked me if I want to give, I'll give the pictures and stuff, and I will. I'm gonna I'm happy to share all that. I have
Yeah, I
no problem with
appreciate
it.
that. I really do. I mean, it's just when I reached out to you in the comment section, I never ever expected this bizarre of an experience. I mean,
I was just honestly, I wasn't asking. I really didn't comment to get a
no,
result.
I know.
I was just commenting, replying to another person commenting.
Yeah, it's like,
I mean, I was just saying, hey, this is my experience. I wasn't looking because I never, we never bothered to talk to anybody about it. I mentioned it at the time to my brother, and my brother at the time thought it was kind of neat. And, but the rest of my family, of course, when you tell other people this, they look at you, or your friends look at you like, sure, that happened. Sure.
yeah, like you got six heads.
Nobody believes you.
What the MUFON guy make of the whole guy, the other guy coming up? What was his kind of? Did he?
He was kind of, like I said, he was kind of freaked out. I mean, you could tell there's some tension, and he has some tension in his voice. I mean, he was like, when I said, he said, I have never heard. I mean, he was emphasized. He goes, I have literally. I'm going to tell you how he said, I have never heard of this person, and he said, I and one other person. And, investigate your area. He goes, I've never heard of this person before in my life. He said, but I will check into this and let you know.
Yeah,
so, which he never found out. So,
right. I
mean, he never found out who that person was. So again, that left me with the question, the one word question is like, why, what did I do to get this type, this type of attention? I mean, what did my family do? All I did is freaking we walked out, my wife walked out to take the dogs out. We witnessed something, and then again, she takes the dogs out, she sees it while I'm gone. Then I see the third one, it's like, okay, maybe I wasn't supposed to see something, but if you don't want someone to see something, then why have it in an area so they can't see in a city, where people can witness this stuff,
Yeah.
I mean, what's your point? I mean, what did I videotape? I haven't looked at my videos in a long time. I haven't really looked at them. Maybe I missed something because, maybe I did. Maybe there's something there I missed that they want to see if I caught. I don't know. Again, this is speculation on my part. I can't say, either or. I don't know. I'm just speculating. Again, I guess before I sit, I give you the stuff, I'm going to look over it one more time and see maybe there's something I missed. Maybe there was something they were trying to hide that they were afraid I might have. Because like I said, the first guy who I thought was an investigator, he looked at it. That's why he wanted this. He said, can I take this stuff? And, like I said, he wasn't happy when I said no. So he saw something. First he tried to sit there, especially the one with the water tower. He said, oh, that's just a water tower. I said, just keep watching. And then the water tower tilts at 40 degrees, and then an airplane flies, even with it. Oh, he goes, that's not a water tower. I was like, no. And then I think you'll see something flying around from the back of it, coming around from the back of it. So you'll notice that in the video. So that's when he admitted that's not a water tower. And plus, I told him, I said, you can drive back there. So I have no water tower back that way. There's no water tower facing behind my house. So.
Yeah, I mean,
and like you said, okay. If you want to say something's weird, that was weird.
Yeah, yeah. And not only like when me and you were talking, not only was it at an angle, but there was also an airplane flying.
Yeah, and believe it or not, he was trying to convince me. He thought I tilted my camera. And like, even if I tilted my camera, it's not going to tilt. The image is still going to be there.
Right. Absolutely.
So, but when the airplane flew, even with it, that's when he said, that's not a water tower. He agreed with me. I mean, I guess he had no other recourse. So maybe that's why he wanted it. I mean, I guess that was something to catch, but, I didn't think anything. I mean, Yeah, did I think something of it? Yes, I did. But did I think it was that big of a deal? No. But again, I'm not, like I said, I told you before, it's not the first UFO I've seen. Certainly not the most dramatic one I've seen. To me, it was not that big of a deal. To me, it wasn't. I'm not dumb to the technology, being an engineer. I can tell you from being an engineer, mechanical engineer, that the most of the stuff that you see that's coming out now has been out for at least 20 to 50 years. You're just seeing the basic byproduct of what is coming out. You're not seeing the good the real product. That's all I'm going to say about as far as being in gym. I'm not bragging or trying to say anything to you. I'm just telling you as far as an engineer and the other engineers I know, what you see now coming out and for public consumption is really the basic stuff. So, and it's just that technology is so advanced that people don't even realize what they think when they say, oh, no, that's really cool. And I'm like, that's really nothing. But, I guess to some people that's, a pretty cool thing. So, but anyway, that was my experience. And it was one I don't really hope my family ever has to repeat. And of all that, believe it or not, the Dogman was, even though I was in the house, is the one I really don't want to repeat. I really don't. I mean, yeah, I have an interest in them now. Do I want to see one? Not in person, but I mean, not outside. I don't mind. If I was in an enclosure and I could see one, but it's still disturbing to see one. Because, to this day, like I said, I won't walk outside my house without carrying a firearm or, something else with me, to protect me, not that I could, after knowing now, if I knew then what I know now, not that it would protect me, at least from what I hear, my 9mm would be like a BB gun to it. So, but, I don't know. Yeah, that was the most memorable part of the whole experience and the most disturbing part of the whole experience to me. If anyone's ever seen one of those things look into your eye, there's nothing more disturbing.
Yeah. It's the whole thing's disturbing.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
I used to have to sit there, and if anyone has ever raised wolves or been around leaving shepherd wolves, you have to play the intimidation display.
Mm-hmm.
You got to hold them down, prove who's alpha. And when that goes with wolves and stuff, you're around them, you cannot ever really relax. You always have to constantly make sure they know you're the alpha. And, but I'll be honest with you. I don't know anybody could be an alpha to one of those things. It's just, it was disturbing. It was just, like I said, maybe I'm making a bigger deal out of it than I should, but, when it's one of those things, I was behind a window and I'm like, if that thing wanted to come through that window, my window wouldn't have stopped it. I would have been dead meat and that would have been the last anybody saw me. So, it's really weird. Like I said, maybe it was right. Maybe you're right. Maybe it was used as an intimidation tool.
Yeah. That's the only thing that I can come up with. And that was just from reading it, not even being there and experiencing it. And as you know, and you heard the narration, I was dumbfounded at the end. Like, I couldn't quite wrap my head around how obvious they were by what they were doing. Yeah. It's like, the government does things like that purposely to just
Well, honestly, it worked. Wow. It literally shut me up. I have not shared any of my stuff. I have not cared to share it. I will now and then now and then said, "Oh, I saw one of these," but I never shared the UFO stuff to anybody. I mentioned it to my family, once or twice, and they blew me off because like most people, if they don't see it for themselves, to them it's not a big deal. So,
right.
They didn't, they never understood what my wife and I went through. And again, details not publicized, I talked to you about.
Yeah.
I mean, I really want to say it, but for my wife's, sake, I'm not going to say it,
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, it's the key thing on this channel is trust and, anonymity. So whatever you want to keep
most people,
to yourself, it's you.
Yeah, you can kind of maybe get where I'm going, but it's just that, okay. Yeah, those details too. Like I said, it would probably draw the story and really cement it. But in my eyes, because to me it's kind of an open letter, what really, about an ending to a story, what really happened. Well, I don't know, but I know you're right now. I agree with you 100%. I think it was an intimidation. It was all about intimidation. It kept me, shut me up, and it worked. At least for this many years, it worked. I'm just, I'm at this point where, why do I even care? It's like, to me, it's like there's way more, to me, interesting stories, people's, events that happened in their life than what happened to me. I'm not saying, I'm not, blowing my story, because by all means, it was very serious. And, the event, like I said, something I thought was just innocent turned into something, to a 6 or 7 month long, actually longer than that, again, harassment and of my family and our well-being. And like I said, I can't ever, to this day, I can't walk outside without looking over my shoulder up on my roof and, worrying. I mean, honest to God, I do not walk outside without this sinking feeling in my stomach. And, I feel sorry for anybody that's seen one of these things and, right in front of them in person. I mean, without something separating them. Even then, because if that's what it did to me and I'm behind the kitchen window and it's outside near my mailbox and it's staring at me, God, I can only imagine the feelings somebody else experienced in person, right then, facing one of these things. I mean, some people don't understand that you will, if you ever experience it, then you'll understand.
Yeah.
Yeah. And, like I said, that's all I can say about it. I hope it's over. Like I said, I'll share all the stuff. It's up to you if you want to share my pictures and video. It's kind of a boring video until the ending. And, when I'm doing that water tower, because you watch this whole video and nothing really happens really until the end. Then you kind of start seeing things happening. To me, it's kind of a boring video. And that's how I treat it. It's like, well, that was interesting. It's tilting at a 40-degree angle. Here comes this plane flying even. I mean, that was really kind of, that was interesting to me, but it wasn't like, oh, wow, But, I mean, I don't know why it wasn't to me, I guess, but it should be. I guess that would be it. But to me, it was just not. I guess I just put it filed in the back of my mind. Like maybe I don't want it to disturb me, like it should be disturbing me. Especially having these things inside around my neighborhood, this close. This kind of close proximity, because really, it opens the question: is what's really going on? And I would like the answer. I mean, what's really going on? What do they really want? What do they, why are they doing? And I'm sure I'm not the only neighborhood, these craft are flying over, so that would make no sense. But anyway, I hope, I kind of enjoyed the experience I had.
Well, I appreciate you coming on and sharing it.
Yeah,
I mean, it's truly, and the interesting thing about all of this and other encounters as well is that now once you got a visual of these things, you're now kind of obsessed with, like finding out what the heck I saw.
no, no, I'm not. Actually, quite the opposite. I really, honestly, I know you would think you would. Now, the Dogman,
Yeah,
I did say I am kind of interested in because
that's
I want
what
to
I
know.
meant with the Dogman. You're kind of obsessed
Yeah,
because
that I do want to know.
you're
But
working on your truck for that and this and
yeah,
that.
I'm designing. I guess we can talk about this. I'm designing my Jeep to actually go out and research Dogman. So I'm actually designing that specifically for that purpose. So, I guess we can share that, but I am curious I do want to know about those. I mean, I really do want to know more about these things because obviously, even just from listening to you, and I've listened to, other podcasts and I've heard, there's been a lot of activity in Texas, on the border, Oklahoma, obviously Mississippi and all that surrounding me, but they're becoming more and more frequent in Texas and central Texas, not just down South Texas or East Texas, but central in my area and Denton, actually, I didn't tell you this earlier, but my wife, one of her coworkers, this is going near Denton, between Denton, up toward McKinney and going toward Denton in between. There's a lot of farmland. And he says one day he saw a big black, what he thought was a wolf, said it was a wolf or a coyote. And he said he saw it jump from the street, one side of the street over a farm fence across the other street. I mean, it was, that's a good 15, 20 feet.
Yeah, that's massive.
And
yeah,
he saw that around probably 7:30 p.m. And when he's coming home from work, and because my wife went out, baby, we had to go out there one time, and it was a really good drive, and it was out in, the real rural country area, and so, I wanted to go out and investigate that because it's like, well, now that I know what dogmen are, it's like, I want to go see if there are dogmen out there.
Yeah. And that's what I was talking about when I said obsessed, because I've talked to so many people. There's two girls had an encounter in New Jersey, and one is petrified. And these are, young girls, 17 years old. One's petrified, and one is obsessed with figuring out everything about these things. So it's something that's weird. Once you see one of these creatures, you're either petrified, terrified, not leaving your house, or you become obsessed and you want to learn as much as possible.
I guess I'm on the obsessed part. That I do. The UFO and the part, I don't care about. Believe it or not, after this, I don't care about that part.
I can't blame you, honestly, on that part. I mean,
well, as we always know, as the story goes, now, like I said, I'm caught up. As the story goes on this, once you find one of these or get any proof, guess who comes knocking on your door?
Yeah.
So my idea behind this is I concise video proof of these. I have no concern to go out and interact with one of these things. I have no concern or desire to kill one of these things, unless of course it does me or my family harm or someone I know. Now my Jeep will be equipped with obviously self-protection. So, but that's not my concern or desire. My only concern or desire is to get proof these exist.
Yep. Research
and to share it with the public, and get it out there the best I can, because the one thing I see is lack of and it's not that people haven't gotten video or pictures of these things, but as you know, Google, YouTube, and other sites censor this stuff.
Mm-hmm.
And of course they come directly. Who did they come after? They trace the IP. So we've already got contingencies of how to get around all that. But my point is, I am obsessed to get to know these things, and that's my sole purpose is to go out and research these things. And my vehicle is being built specifically just to do that. So, if anybody wants to help, throw in some, that'd be great.
Yeah, send me an email and I'll get in touch with you and we can figure it out.
Okay.
Kind of running out of time here. Don't hang up when we end the interview. Is there anything that you'd like to say to everybody before we end the interview?
Be careful who you let in the house, but especially if you ever catch a, video or something and you call a place like Newfound and you invite somebody in your house, make sure verify who you invite into your house is who they say they are.
Absolutely.
Okay. Don't do what I did and just, blindly accept them in there thinking they are who they are. And because otherwise you may go through what my family and I went through. And I'm going to say this one more time. I know I feel like I'm repeating myself here, but there are details I left out of this story that Jeff knows that, that could possibly happen that you don't want happening. So, that's my advice. And please be careful out there, especially if you ever encounter one of these dogmen.
Absolutely. So, absolutely.
Because like I said, I saw one from the window and it was, that was a eye-opening experience for me. But again, what I'm doing maybe not smart, but it's the direction I feel it's driving me into. Is like, I want to know more about these things because knowledge is power, and you can't, if you don't know anything about something, you can't combat what's coming. I mean, again, these things are becoming more and more prevalent in my state, and in most states they are. And so I think the more we learn, because we're not going to get any answers from the government.
Absolutely. I mean, their lips are sealed. So
yeah.
Well, we are up on time. Like I said, don't hang up. But it was great having you on. And anybody that wishes to join G-Man here on the research and quest to find the truth, email me and I'll get you in touch with him.
And I really appreciate that. And like I said, I mean, if you be more than happy to ever come on again if I get any more new stories.
Absolutely. So, all right, my friend. Thank you so much.
You're welcome.
Have a great night.
You too.
All right, guys. I hope you guys enjoyed today's upload as much as I enjoyed sharing it with you all. Like I said, I'm going to be with my buddy Drew a little later today. He's going to talk to his friend over at the lab. We are waiting on that one other result back. My whole thing is if it comes back crocata, so genus or species genus crocata with a extra gene or DNA, man, what are we dealing with? Is it, because it can't be, he said, I said, well, is it a spotted hyena? Could someone, and he said no, because whatever this extra DNA swirl or gene is that removes it from being a spotted hyena. So, I don't know. I know that I need to get some sleep, and I'll have some more answers for you tomorrow, I guess, or today, tomorrow, whenever I'm beat. So, stay safe. I appreciate all your support. May the Great Spirit watch out over us all, and may He guide us down that path that we call life. Man, I'm so tired. So, have a good night, guys. Thank you.